Is it just me? I can't be the only one that after reading My Hero Academia chapter 326, I kinda got teary-eyed. I ain't gonna lie, just a wee bit, just a smidge of a tear was in me eyes, lad, because it brought me back to the days of early My Hero Academia, 2014, 2015, 2016, around that time, where All Might was undeniably my favorite character. All Might was like, yo, he's that dude, he's awesome, he's like, you know, a Japanese manga version of Superman, but he's funny as hell, and just in general, I was like, yo, this dude, he can't do no wrong. I love seeing him. He gets me freaking excited to see more things going on. After the All for One battle, ever since then, it hasn't been the same, but this chapter reignited that love that I have for this character, and also just reminded me of the depths of his character, and how far we've come from those days of the, you know, the happy-go-lucky boy blue days, so to speak, because yeah, shit is tragic, shit is dark, but I also feel like this chapter showcased the end of a dark time and a dark period in My Hero Academia, especially with the significance of the end of the reign in this chapter. But fam, we gotta talk, because not only was we got that, you know, that little mushy stuff and them talking that mushy shit, you know what I'm saying, but then we also just had epicness of Stain showing up, just in general, like, yo, was Stain the hero killer, really? We're doing this right now with All Might? Yeah. Big stuff there. So without further ado, people, we got to talk a little bit like this one right here, reminding me again the greatness that All Might is. Let's talk a little bit of that All Might greatness. Let's do it.
No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done.
Yes, people, it's time to talk a little bit of All Might greatness. I ain't gonna lie, I haven't felt this gung-ho about the character in years. It's been a lot of years since I was able to say, like, this is that chapter that reminds me. Like, there was that chapter, what, a few months back now, where he fell when he was trying to reach out to Deku, and that was emotional, but it wasn't necessarily me looking and reminding myself about why I liked All Might. It was just that moment in particular was very, very sad, and it was just kind of heartbreaking to see All Might, the relic that he ultimately looked like in that chapter. This chapter, though, it was very empowering. I feel like it's kind of crazy to see that, you know, a murderer, you know, a not so good person, an anti-hero, quote unquote, but he was really a bad dude to a certain degree. Stain is one of the things that really would put a pep in your step. If you was reading My Hero Academia for the last year or some change, and you felt maybe a little down about things, you felt like, yo, this is depressing, man. Like, how much more can we go through it? To see Stain come and be that light of hope, so to speak, for My Hero Academia's fandom, it's nuts, but it happened. Because it starts off with All Might driving towards a hero-hating group that basically they refused to go to a shelter. I believe they were called Ectoplasm, and ultimately they refused to join a shelter, and they hated heroes, and kind of felt very reminiscent of just everything that's been going on in the real world in the last couple of years. You could definitely feel like Horikoshi has been inspired by everything that's been transpiring with everything, whether it be politics, everything that's just happened in the last couple of years. My Hero Academia, in my opinion, has been reflecting that. And he's just reminiscing in that car drive like I tend to do, which I guess made it more relatable. Like, he's thinking back of some sad shit about him and Deku, and how he basically was trying to protect him, and ultimately he fell trying to reach out to him. And, you know, he's like a wounded animal to a certain degree. But I gotta say, throughout this chapter, there was something pretty, I don't want to say surprising, but definitely interesting, to say the least, about All Might's character, but just representative of, even though he's, you know, the shriveled up little guy that he ultimately is now and has to remain, he's still kind of a badass with a lot of heart and no fucks to give. But we'll get to that in a second. And by no fucks to give, I mean if anybody's trying to play with him. Like, yes, he cares a lot about his disciple, his student, his students, you know, UA and in general, all of that stuff. But when it comes to somebody playing with him, he's with it, fam. He's with the shits, and he's ready to go whatever and do whatever. But he arrives at that spot where Coinkadinkly, which I guess he was probably hot on his trail trying to figure out where Deku is and whatnot, but he arrives at the spot where Deku had that struggle with 1A, and he sees a piece of Deku's mask on the ground right there next to the statue of All Might with the sign around its neck that says, I am not here. And I ain't gonna lie, I've always felt like that was such a strong touch that Horikoshi added in all of this mayhem ever since the aftermath of the Shigaraki War and all that jazz. Like, it always felt very impactful of, like, to take something that, you know, he was a symbol of hope, a symbol of justice, a symbol of everybody being able to live a normal, peaceful life, and to take his phrase, his catchphrase, and now that I think about it, Horikoshi has been kind of masterfully, subtly doing things like that, between flipping All Might's words to Deku of "you're next" and All For One saying that, and then the "I'm here" to "I'm not here. That's something that Horikoshi has been purposely showcasing, that we are literally topsy-turvy. We are in the Twilight Zone right now of My Hero Academia's universe, because everything how the series started is exact opposite. There's no peace. There's no heroes that people look up to. None of it. The people don't worship the heroes or don't even look at the heroes as like, you know, some peace of mind or anything like that. Everything is opposite. It was painful to watch, and it was painful to witness, where All Might is just, you know, beating himself down, talking to himself, saying, yo, you couldn't even do nothing for your disciple when he was hurting. And it was a rough one, this chapter. Mind you, I'm praising it, but ultimately it was tough to see somebody that, you know, so powerful, so amazing, All Might, everything that he was and everything he stood for, being this down in the dumps and this down in despair. And you could tell that it was also an internal struggle. He's recalling moments that he had with Aizawa telling him, yo, just live, continue to be around. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes that's all people really need, is for you to just continue to go, even though you're all destroyed and messed up. Continue on. And it really, I ain't gonna lie, I was teary-eyed, a little teary-eyed. Yes, I was, when he says, at this point, All Might, you're just getting in the way. He's telling himself that. That was tough to hear. Like, that's like, imagine, you know, your idol in this world, and you're hearing your idol that always made you feel safe, always made you feel secure, to see him in that state. I put myself in those shoes. Like, imagine Deku watching this, if he was, for example, how horrible that would feel. And yo, when I talk about all the way up, going from 0 to 100, Stain, fam. Stain, when he shows up and says, what blasphemy, what vile blasphemy against a hero, he was pissed. You ain't gonna talk about All Might, because that was something that was always very interesting and very introspective about Stain, that he had this moral compass that was not the, you know, typical moral compass. It wasn't black and white. He was literally the gray, the color gray in the My Hero Academia universe, where the world was just black and white, yin and yang. Stain was that color gray that the world needs. But what I was speaking about earlier about All Might not giving a fuck, again, I wasn't speaking about, you know, his relationship with Deku. He clearly cares very heavily. He didn't give a shit about Stain showing up with a sword to him. He looked so unfazed in the face, considering that, like, yo, this guy, he could kill you at any time. You don't got any powers anymore, All Might. I don't know if you got any, like, you know, a bat belt or some shit with a bunch of gadgets to get away, but yeah, that's the hero killer responsible for murdering a lot of heroes and stuff. And I think it's a mixture between depression, probably, of All Might not really giving a shit, like, if I die, I die, whatevs, I'm a failure anyway. And I think also just, that's also All Might. Also All Might of like, yo, do it. And Stain tells him to take it back. And All Might recounts like, oh, wait a minute, we never actually had a face-to-face meeting, because yeah, when all was said and done, Stain went to prison before he could ever reach All Might, and the only hero that he would accept putting him down. And All Might tries to tell him like, yo, you know, you missed a lot while you was in prison, but yes, I am All Might. I am him, he is I. And Stain continues, no, you're wrong, you're not All Might. And I loved it, because I immediately caught on what he was trying to say, like, because, you know, even he goes into his buff form at one given point, All Might's like, boom, you know, because he can still do that for like a split second or whatnot to kind of prove him, and he's like, yo, are you gonna kill me or what? Like, again, I think it's crazy to say that All Might is depressed at this point. To see, again, it just boggles my mind. The #1 hero is basically falling into depression. Like, that's how bad shit has gotten, that he's ready to go. He's on some Notorious B.I.G. fuck the world, fuck my moms and my girl, my life is played out like a Jerry curl, I'm ready to die. But then Stain goes even further to say, once again, no, you're not All Might, you sham. How dare you step on this holy ground and claim to be that hero? And even further, like, I know I keep going to depression, but I know depression when I see it, and Horikoshi wrote All Might perfectly to fit what that feeling would be like, where he's like, yeah, you're right, my whole life has been basically me spurred on of like, hey, I need to help these people, almost as if it was a knee-jerk reaction, and like, look where it led me, look at the outcome of everything. It's like, yeah, my whole I'm gonna be a hero has led to destruction, chaos, and I can't do nothing to help anybody. That's depression. And it's kind of sad to see that Horikoshi is writing this very, very realistic. Now, it could be that he's just on the nose with it. It could be that he knows people. It could be that Horikoshi himself has went through or is going through something like this, because it it feels real. It feels very realistic of somebody that is down in the dumps. And a couple of other things that All Might said again. And it's hard for me to talk about some of this because it's emotional. It's emotional because he says, you know, I would have given my life for my disciple at the drop of a hat, but I couldn't muster up the courage, or I couldn't be able to tell my disciple to take time for himself. That's tough because the problem with why he couldn't really get himself to do that was because he knows that his disciple was modeling himself after him, and he would be a hypocrite. He knew that for a long time now. I'd be a hypocrite to tell him like, yo, just relax, take a chill pill, because I never would have been able to do it. But the difference is, which there's still a road in between the two, is that All Might, he was kind of built different, and also All Might wasn't ever facing anything like this. Like, the world wasn't in complete and utter destruction under All Might's watch. He had it, I don't want to say easier, but ultimately he was able to deal with it in a different fashion and didn't have all of this going up against him, especially at this early age. So I think that that's the difference, where All Might never had it this freaking bad. He had it bad. He had to face against All For One and all that jazz, but it never got this bad, especially this early where Deku is in life, where Deku is succumbing to some of this, and Deku fell through a lot of things because, again, he didn't have the experience. He didn't have any of that, and again, All Might would have been a hypocrite to tell him. So I understand where All Might is coming from. Like, he didn't want to be a hypocrite to tell Deku, slow down, just chill out, because Deku would have looked at him like, but you never chilled out. And I think he was wilding when he said it, but nevertheless, he even says, I feel like I'm the only one that's gotten distant and away from the whole heroism and what it means to be a hero, which I would say that's false. I mean, there's people that are freaking hanging up the cape to begin with, and I guess if you're talking about real heroes, then maybe you're onto something. But in terms of the heroes, like, how many people just were proven to be frauds to begin with? And that's the depression talking. And for a moment, it gave me a little bit of a chuckle when Stain grabbed All Might and pulled him to the side, and All Might was like, yo, we're not that cool, like, to be embracing. Like, what are you doing, fam? What's going on here, bro? But he's basically trying to show All Might, he's like, observe, and it's basically some female that came through, and she's like cleaning things up, and she says, oh, they did it again. Well, until they get the message, and it's basically her cleaning up all of the, you know, vandalism that was done to the All Might statue, taking the sign from around his neck, I am not here, all the spray paint. Basically, she's cleaning the mess of everything because this is somebody that she clearly cares about, you know, All Might. And All Might finds out and realizes that every day, amongst everything, that there's criminals and villains, and just, you know, whether it be the common criminal or the super villain, has been outside, and she's been coming through, risking her life to come and clean this shit up because she really cares about and believes in this hero, because apparently this was the last person that All Might saved at the end of the battle against All For One. So that's a really dope callback that Horikoshi did. I've noticed lately Horikoshi's been doing a lot of callbacks, like, oh, this is that, like that one character with the 3 or 4 sticks that are sticking out that he was like in the first chapter, and then in one of the recent chapters he was there again with Deku, and he's like one of the people that really recognized Deku as a hero. Like, Horikoshi's been doing a lot of callbacks, very subtle though. He's not making them like very apparent and throwing it in your face, but nevertheless he's been doing callbacks to like earlier stuff in the series, which also you could argue was him wrapping loose threads up one by one. And Stain just continues. Again, the hero killer is the one that is giving the pep talk and telling All Might, like, yo, even in the worst of times, All Might didn't care about quirks and powers. None of that shit mattered to him. It was about inspiring and pushing people in their soul. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was something different. All Might wasn't like the average person, the average hero, any hero. All Might essentially hit different. His message lives on, you know, even in the small embers, basically saying that everything that All Might stood for, everything that he represented is still out there. There's still, whether it be a small group of people, nevertheless, there's still a fraction of what once was still out there, still burning, and that as long as you continue going, one day it could grow into a giant flame again. Right now it's a small ember, but you still got people. There's still Deku. There's still this girl, whether you want to call her insignificant or not, the last person All Might saved, she still believes in the hero. She still believes in the number one that once was. And if you have people, even if it's small, even if it's distant like that, backing you, you can do anything, and you gotta continue. All Might being something like that. Sometimes I feel to a certain degree in somewhat of that fashion, and what I mean by that is sometimes I be filling in the dumps. You know what I'm saying? Like, getting a little bit personal. I normally don't do this at all, but getting a little bit personal. Sometimes I feel really defeated. Like, real life be kicking my ass. And sometimes I want to give up. Sometimes I want to say the most depressing shit. In fact, I used to be a lot of depression out there. I used to say a lot of depressing things, and I can't do that. Not that I'm bottling them up necessarily, because I make sure to handle mine, but ultimately I gotta inspire people, because if I'm out there and people look up to me and people see me as some sort of beacon of like, yo, Fenev's handling it, I can handle it too. I can't put out the wrong messages. And that's something that All Might is basically fighting with right now, is that he feels defeated, but people need All Might. People need somebody that is going to uplift them. And you got to fight through it. And when the girl said, you know, I'm doing my best, so you do your best too, okay? I was just like, oh, man. It's kind of a reminder that My Hero Academia has not only come a long way, but it also reminds me, like, they've said that this is, you know, the last arc or whatever the heck is going on. We're headed towards the end. Like, just very, very emotional. The most emotional chapter in a long time of My Hero. Like, even more emotional than some of the stuff in the solo Deku hero arc and shit like that. Like, this one, it hit different. And then Stain kind of spills the beans in a more poetic way. Like, honestly, Stain was so damn poetic now that I think about it throughout this, when he refers to All Might falling as a god falling to earth, and All Might is shocked, like, holy shit, you seen that? Yeah, he's been creeping around. Like, he's still a kind of a creepy dude, you know what I'm saying? He's been creeping around for a minute. He saw what happened between Deku and All Might and how it transpired. And again, the way he just referred to it, like, I don't know, maybe after all of this, Stain can hang up the cape, so to speak, of being the hero killer or whatever the heck he's trying to be nowadays, and be a poet. Like, I don't know, go to some, you know, Jabo juice bar or some shit and just tell some poems. Why not? And following All Might saying, oh my god, you seen that? Stain says, like, I don't presume to know you, but if you are that hero, if you really still believe in those ideals, then use this information I got from my time at Tartarus to fix society, to change society. And then it kind of got really dark when he said, and come kill Stain, the hero killer that murdered 40 heroes and shit. Like, I was like, whoa, yes, come kill the person that just dragged you out of depression. And it ends with the rain letting up, and I feel like that was very poetic. Honestly, this was a poetic chapter. Like, the rain letting up was to signify that the darkest times is over. You know how they say it's darkest just before the sun comes out? The darkest times is over. Both of them, between Deku and All Might, it was like two sides of the same coin throughout this arc of, or these last couple arcs at that, of like, they were both fighting some really dark shit that they were going through, while Deku on the other side had all of, you know, Class 1A and everything to drag him out of the pits of it. All Might had Stain, but nevertheless Stain, and just seeing somebody from his hero days of when he made a difference in his mind that is still believing in what All Might represented, and that pulled him out of it. The rain is over because the darkest parts is done, and like Aizawa said last chapter, it's time for the strike back. It's time for revenge. It's time to kick some major villain ass, and I'm all here for it. Very curious what you guys think. For starters, did you get emotional? Did you feel sad? Did you tear up? Did you cry with everything that happened with this chapter? How did you feel about Stain's involvement with All Might? Do you think that Horikoshi just hit the nail on the head of just showcasing depression? Because that's what it felt like for me, just personally. It felt like straight up this was All Might's depression, and he's moved past it. It's subsided at this point, and he's ready to go back and help his disciple. And your overall thoughts and expectations for the My Hero Academia manga with chapter 327 and beyond. It's time to go plus ultra. As corny as that sounds, I don't know, this shit got me emotional. All Might forever. But that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Hit that bell to get all notifications. And if you want to follow any of my other social media, links are in the description below. I'm FenevWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. And remember the golden rule: anime and manga for life. Bye. Have an awesome day. Peace in, and it's time, baby. It's time. All Might back, Deku back. Shout outs to Stain. Shout outs to Stain. Have an awesome one.
So just go to find me.